fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Well, welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren, Mr. Dave at Rose Martino. The Rose is back.
The Rose? The Rose is back?
The Rose is in the house.
Oh, no.
Well, you need roses after that halftime performance you did. I couldn't believe that you were on halftime. You didn't tell me you were going to be on there, you know?
Yeah. I didn't know. I didn't know either.
Yeah. You did a great job, okay?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I heard more people listen to that halftime than the biggest show, which was Michael Jackson in 93. So there you go. You're the number one guy.
I'm number one?
Yeah. Number one better than being number two, right?
That's right. That's right.
Oh,
but okay.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we have got an interesting author here. She's got, she's written under true crime, and she's written under fiction, like crime fiction. So we'll get her in the room and we'll talk about her books. So author DM Barr with Deadly When Disturbed is the latest book, January 14th, came out. So welcome to the show, Dawn.
Thanks so much. Pleasure to be here.
Well, Dawn, what's going on in your world that you're writing about murder? Like, what happened?
That's all I write about.
I know, but like I was just noticing, there's a theme here.
I tried to write a romance, and then I said to my critique group, it's not working. There are no dead bodies.
Well, so then you murdered the romance. There you go. Well, it's interesting, but you know, because you have to wonder, like, what were you really interested in true crime or true stories or murder shows on TV or something when you were young, and that kind of got into this, or what?
I hate to admit that I really didn't watch much true crime, and here I am writing a 10-volume true crime travel guidebook, but I was never somebody who was addicted to those shows. The movies I've always loved and the books I've always loved have been psychological thrillers and domestic suspense. I was reading Harriet the Spy when I was very young, and I was reading Encyclopedia Brown and Nancy Drew, and you know, those are the books that always interested me. So when I started writing, that was where I gravitated toward.
So what gave you the courage to actually think you wanted to write and have the books published? Do you know what I mean? Get it out there and other people could read it. Was there something an event or some sort of particular thing that got you going?
Yes. I was a magazine writer for a long time. I wrote about the business of travel, and I then became a realtor. And so I was already published hundreds of articles when I became a realtor, and I wanted to write a book about how dangerous it was to be a realtor, because people don't realize that you're putting glamour shots on signposts and on your cards, making yourself look the best you can look, and then you're telling the world that you're alone in an empty house for 4 hours on a Sunday, and not the smartest thing to do. And you're getting into empty cars with strangers, you're going into empty houses with strangers, and it just seemed to me to be a very dangerous profession. So my first book was a book called Expired Listings, which is sort of a satire, but it was also a psychological thriller. And it was about somebody's killing all the unethical agents in Rock Canyon, which means all of them. And nobody really cares because the public thinks it's a public service, and the other agents think, great, less competition. So there's all the murders are being pinned on this one very kinky realtor who uses her empty houses for very naughty things, which explains why I wrote the book under another name, because I didn't want people to think that I was doing that in their empty houses.
Sure.
I wish it would have been a lot more interesting.
More detail here. What's going on?
So I've actually set 3 books at Rock Canyon Realty, the most recent being Deadly When Disturbed. And I tackled different aspects of real estate with that. But I did write a book about being a travel writer that was based on one of my press trips to Argentina. So that got included as well. All my books have something that's a little autobiographical in them, though I'm not saying which parts are because, again, I have not killed anybody.
Did you find it difficult to transition from writing nonfiction books to popular prose fiction?
Well, actually, I was writing nonfiction articles, and I really thought my first book would be the book that ended up being one of my last books, which was Traveling Different, about writing. It's about traveling with children with autism, which is a book I wanted to start writing a long time ago, and it was very difficult to do it when I wanted to do it because I didn't quite know who to interview and where to go. And during COVID, that became very clear to me, and I was able to finish that book. But yeah, I did not expect my first book to be fiction. I am writing nonfiction now, too. I will tell you that nonfiction is a lot more difficult because of the fact checking. You know, I'm terrified to get a fact wrong. And with fiction, I can sort of glaze over the things that I don't want to really deal with and make them kind of vague.
And you can sort of have a little bit more justice, I think, in fiction than nonfiction, because a lot of times in the truth, it doesn't always turn out good,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
You know, I always think that, you know. And writing nonfiction myself, I noticed that there's always, whenever you're doing a case or some sort of story, there's always a lot of gossip and innuendo and stories that go around about the different people involved in it, and you don't know what's true and what's not. You know, there's so much to sift through.
Yeah, well, I'm writing these true crime travel guides, and I do snippets of all the major crimes in various states. And I use newspapers.com for a lot of my research. And it is amazing how much variation there is between newspapers for just the smallest things like somebody's age or date. And it's, you know, I'm constantly saying, well, this is the age, though some sources say it's this age, because I always want to cover my tracks. But it is sort of disheartening that there is no truth.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's one of the first things you notice when you're doing old cases and you start going through all the newspapers, through newspaper, or there's a few other places too that does that. And they all, yeah, it's a different character, and it almost sounds like a different person, different age, different description sometimes. It's a strange thing how it is, you know. So, you know, when I was looking at Deadly When Disturbed, so your fiction book, and your Realtor, and Dara Banks, do you write this in her point of view?
It's written mostly from her point of view, but there's an antagonist named Mary Rafter, and parts of it, as you get into the second part of the book, are written from her point of view. So it goes back and forth, but it is not evenly done. Most of it is in Dara's point of view. It's third person close.
Oh, okay. And so when you write in Dara, how do you experience your character, Dara? Is this a character that you hear, you see it like a movie? How would you describe your relationship, let's say, with Dara Banks?
Yeah, I always think of these characters as being partly me and how I would react to different things. And I'm naturally paranoid, so when she starts worrying about what Mary is up to, I would absolutely be worrying about that too. Some people in the reviews have said, you know, why wouldn't she do a background check? And I think most people don't realize that to work at a real estate agent, your only requirement is that you're breathing. And even then it's iffy. I mean, yeah, you have to have a license. In New Jersey, you actually get fingerprinted, but in New York, no. And I've never had a background check done on me. So
we're doing it right now.
Yeah. We're just waiting for it to come in, you know, via fax.
Yeah. So Dara, you know, she's got a stepdaughter who has autism, where I was able to sort of capitalize on a lot of the research I did from my nonfiction book. And she's overworked, and I think she is always questioning her, you know, dividing up her life between working in real estate and taking care of her kids and her family, which is a constant struggle for me. I mean, people ask me how I'm successful, and I'd say, well, abject neglect. That's not the only way that I can do everything, is I have to neglect something.
Right.
So I'm always dealing with worrying about that. And that, you know, there's always in my books, a lot of problems with your parents. That parent-child problem, it's either me and my parents or me and my kids that I've got issues with that I'm trying to work out on paper. There's always that.
Always. It's just part of life.
Yeah.
Well, does she ever surprise you? Do your characters kind of take your plot off the rails, or take you maybe where you weren't expecting to go?
Oh, yeah, because I'm a pantser. So I will start with an idea of a character. I'll pretty much know the ending, though sometimes that changes. And I'm reading it as I'm writing it. And you asked if I hear the characters. I do hear them. And I do see everything very visually. I mean, I'm almost like directing a movie. And that's why I really enjoy listening to the audiobooks. And when I have audiobooks done and I'm able to, when I hold the rights and I'm auditioning and I'm okaying the audiobooks, it's always fun for me because it's the closest I'm getting to having a movie done. So yeah, I do hear them. They do surprise me. There is a big car accident in the middle of Deadly When Disturbed that surprised me because, you know, you're told that whenever things get slow, just throw something horrible at your protagonist. So that's what I do. And I am never sure what it's going to be until it happens.
Wow. When it's slow, kill someone. That's what.
Yeah. Or at least make life really miserable for them.
Yeah. A lot of fun, you know. Is there a subtext in this Deadly When Disturbed and when you're doing a fiction? And is there a meaning or something, or do you want people to get something out of the book, or are you trying to do just entertainment?
No, I usually have a theme, and there's an underlying theme that none of the reviewers have really picked up on that, and that's the dual meaning of altruism. I mean, Dara's parents are philanthropists, but they do it because of social standing. They don't do it because they really care about the children they're fostering. They have an unending supply of foster children that they took care of instead of taking care of their daughter. And that led to a lot of Dara's issues. And, you know, no one has commented on it, but I think there's something to that some people take altruism as a way to get ahead or to look good as opposed to doing right by people. So that's a theme in the book. And in the dual, the cover has a woman or two people photographed in shards of glass. And the reason for that is that the book is about people wrecking homes, like home wreckers, but also homes wrecking people, because Dara's husband is an architect who had a terrible accident on the job where a pane of glass imploded and cut his fingers to shreds. So there's that, wrecking homes and homes wrecking people. And also the faces we show ourselves are not always true to life. And I feel like I hear The Stranger, Billy Joel's The Stranger in the background. But we show one face to the world, and it's not always our real face, and we don't always show ourselves that real face either. And these are women who are protecting very fragile self-images that aren't really real. Right.
They're created, you know. It's kind of my life, you know. When you're writing the nonfiction, but when you're doing your travel true crime, do you carry on the same type of subtext through those, or is there a different reason that you write those books?
Yeah, the reason I'm writing them is they haven't been written yet.
Oh, that's a good reason.
There's no subtext other than I feel, boy, maybe this will sell. No, I like when I see a spot that's open, and there aren't really a lot of vacancies in the true crime world. Everybody's writing everything, but nobody wrote a book about, if you're going into a town, where are the exact addresses where all the murders happened and all the crimes happened, and where are the true crime tours? Where are the haunted restaurants and hotels and the hotels that used to be jails? Where are the crime museums? Where is everybody buried? And then put together a whole itinerary, a set of itineraries that pull this all together. So if you're a true crime lover who's on a road trip, you can take it all in.
Right. It's interesting. How do you go about finding all those places? Like just through papers or research? I guess.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Newspapers.com is your friend. There are a number of websites that I use to get the major crimes and decide which ones I'm going to use. I mean, in New York, you had to kill 5 or 6 people to get in because there's so much crime in New York. I had to make some hard choices. but I couldn't get out of newspapers for exact addresses, because sometimes you have to go through 10 newspapers to find an address. If I couldn't find it that way, I contacted historical societies and got it that way. And I was able to also do some of my own detective work too, using some databases that I have access to as a realtor to figure out where some people might have been living. And I'm always indicating in the text that this is supposed, this is based on my own research. It might not be definite. It was a lot of different research, also putting the itineraries together. That took a long time because I don't want people to have to backtrack. I wanted everything to make sense. And I had to look at a lot of paranormal websites to find haunted places. And, it's like I spent 6 months on each book. It's like a month per state, and then a month of fact checking.
Did you go to a lot of places yourself?
No, I mean, if I'm in town, I do, but I didn't go on tour to do this because it would be unending and also very expensive. But honestly, when I was in Pennsylvania, I went to the Eastern State Penitentiary, and that was a fascinating thing. And I've been to the Mutter Museum, which is also interesting. Both of those places are listed in the Pennsylvania guide. I've tried to get to some of the haunted restaurants that I listed in the New York section, but there's a lot. I mean, the biography is 500 entries per book. So, I mean, there's a ton of information in these. It would be very difficult to see everything.
Well, it'd be a good write-off, and you could spend your time eating and traveling.
Yeah, I've done that. I mean, I've done all my past life. I'm juggling these with true. I'm writing crime. I'm not writing. I'm editing crime fiction anthologies for Down and Out books. So I've got a couple coming out this year that are crime fiction based on or inspired by the music of Elton John and Bernie Taupin. So that's coming out in. One's coming out in August and one's coming out in December. And then I'm right now accepting submissions for another one with where the stories are based on or inspired by Broadway shows, Broadway musicals, so Broadway show tunes. So I'm doing that too. And so there's a lot of, I don't have the time to travel.
Oh, come on. Too much work makes you a dull Johnny, right? Well, and so what do you look for when you're editing and stuff like that? When people send things, is there certain ways people should be writing these stories for anthologies?
I love the stories where they'll take a title, and I love it when it's an obscure title. Some people picked Elton John songs that I didn't even know, and then they go in a totally different direction that has nothing to do with the song. And so I tend to really appreciate that. And I mean, I love good writing. So I was blessed. There's 34 different stories in the Elton John anthology, which is called Better Off Dead. They're strong. I mean, I had a lot to pick from. I think I got about 50 or 60 entries for that. And we settled on 34. And they are strong stories. For the new one, which is the Broadway show tune one, I had 80 spots open. So I don't know how many volumes that's going to end up being, but I have some really top writers who are submitting. So I'm really pleased with that.
So how do you turn down someone?
It's very difficult for me to turn down people. And I think this is an element of personal growth that I did not, when I turned them down, I did not tell them why. I did not send them the edited manuscript where I made all the changes. I just said we had a lot of really strong entries, and I'm afraid you didn't make it this time. But I've got another one coming up later in the year. Please enter then. Well,
yeah, that must be a tough part of the process, I would say.
It is. And I come from, many years of getting rejected, so I know how tough that is.
Yeah. Well, we've got some of the rejects on the line right now. No. Oh, that's So when you're doing a series like that, how do you know when you're going to stop? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, how do you decide on your limit of how many you're going to do?
We're talking about the crime fiction?
Yeah.
Oh, I stole it. I stole the idea from someone else who I saw put a limit on it. And I thought, okay, this is going to give me, if I have 80 submissions, I'm figuring maybe 20 or 30% are not going to submit in the end. They're going to have some reason why they can't. and maybe another 10 or 20% aren't going to be as good as the others. And so I'm going to end up with maybe 30 or 40 stories.
Right. So there's a process you have. When you write your own fictional books,
Yeah.
like the newest one and stuff, are you planning to be making a big series of your Realtor book?
No, I've never really written for series. I've always written standalones. It just seems that I came back to Rock Canyon Realty because I could see different aspects of real estate that could be totally exploited for horrible reasons. And I do have 2 more ideas for the series that I'm probably going to write. I'm thinking of doing a series that had nothing really. It's sort of a standalone series that's going to bring in characters from my standalones so that I can create a universe. And if I ever have time to do that, it would be wonderful to do. I mean, I have all these ideas floating around. I just have to find time.
When you're writing and you're writing your standalone novels, or when you're looking into possibly doing a series, how do you keep track of your continuity? Do you have a system? I know that you're not really doing series, so you wouldn't have like a series Bible right now, but do you have a system that you go through to make sure that everything stays on point?
Well, there's one restaurant that keeps popping, 2 restaurants that keep popping up in my Rock Canyon Realty books. And one is called Eggs Over E Street, which is a brunch place. And so I just remember, and I just sort of throw that in. I think I write down the street names so I can come back to them if I need to. But I basically know who the characters are, and I haven't had any repeating characters yet. When I bring the characters in again, if I do that, I'll have to worry about doing a series Bible then. But it really, standalones, I really didn't have to do that at all.
Interesting. How does when you're writing a book like that, like Deadly and Disturbed, because it's close to what you do, real estating and that, how does it affect you? How does it change you when you go through one of these books?
I have to say this is the darkest book I've written, and it really depressed me at some points when I was rereading it. It's like, this is really dark. It was inspired by a friendship of mine that died. I took that person, and I sort of combined them with some other actresses that I've known in my life, and Mary is a composite of those people. But I think I just get depressed at sometimes reading that book, and it must show. I mean, I also had a book it's called Murder Worth the Wait, and wait is spelled WEIGHT, and it's about a revival, a body acceptance revival, sort of like Elmer Gantry for the overweight, that rolls into town. And whenever he rolls into town, fat shamers end up getting murdered. And I had a character who is a cub reporter who's investigating this, and she's sort of put together the pieces because these murders happen in all different states. And I had her stand up and have to give a soliloquy. She stands up in front of the whole revival and starts talking. And, as a yo-yo dieter, that was almost like cutting my wrists and bleeding on the page. That was a very difficult thing to write. And I felt myself getting more and more upset as I was writing it, which I knew meant it was very strong.
Yeah, because I would imagine when you're writing something so close to who you are or what you're doing and stuff like that, and it must also change. You still do real estate?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, I was going to say it must change the way you do things as a realtor.
I've always been nervous about doing open houses alone, and I got to the point after writing the first book, which was back in 2016, that when I did an open house, I made sure that I had other vendors there with me, and I sort of called it a traveling home show. So I made sure that I wasn't the only person in the empty house. I also had a mortgage person, and I had maybe somebody who was a real estate attorney, and maybe somebody who did home renovations. So it was great for the buyers. When they came in, they had, one-stop shop. But it was good for me, too, because I didn't have to worry about getting killed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All around good thoughts. Well, that's actually good. So what do you got going now? You've got, of course, the nonfiction and the travel stuff. Anything else in the works? How many things do you got going at a time?
Well, right now, with Vacations Can Be Murder, I'm just finished the red line edits on the first one, and I'm about to start heavily promoting it to different places. I am doing the red line edits on the second one, and I've got to start writing the third. And I am accepting submissions for the second of the crime fiction anthologies. And then I do some freelance editing on the side. So I get those books and I'm editing them. And I just wrote a short story, so there's that.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, you just do that on your break, right?
Yeah. No, something came to me, and I keep thinking that I'll be able to recycle all this research that I'm doing for the true crime books into some fiction. I should be able to fictionalize some of those, maybe some minor characters from some of the true crime, and write some fiction based on that as well. But like I said, I have so many ideas, and I don't have the time to do a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's probably better to have too many and more to work with than not enough.
Yeah. It's been
being
interesting.
blocked and sitting. Yeah,
But
So I was going to say, so let's give out your information. So if people want to contact you, or if they have to submit and stuff, where do people find you? Social media, your website? Do you have what's going on with?
My website is DM Barr, and that's 2 R's, .com. And I have a website for Vacations Can Be Murder, which is vacationscanbemurder.com. There's also a Facebook page for that. And basically, when I announce the open calls for the crime anthologies, and I guess I'll be doing another call later in the summer, I put them on the Short Mystery Fiction Society page on Facebook. And I also have Down and Out send something to all their authors so that everybody gets an email. And I haven't had, and that gets picked up and sent to other places too. So I haven't had a shortage of submissions. I have a really interesting idea coming out this summer for another anthology it'll be different. It won't be music.
Oh, well, there you go. Keep us in suspense.
Yeah. That's my job.
That's your job.
Right.
Well, we'll put your website up, and we'll have all the other information up and all that. Do you like to interact with readers too? Do
I
you
love
have
it.
like your own personal place to go? Is it just the website, or do you do social media for that?
I do TikTok. I do Instagram, and I may do YouTube. I'm not sure. I do love hearing from readers, and I've been interacting a lot. Been getting a lot of really nice reviews on TikTok and Instagram, and I always try to comment, and I appreciate the reviewers who do that, and the readers. I just love talking to them. I have one reader who keeps reading my books, and then she's like emailing me at every plot turn to tell me what she thinks about it, and I love that because I wish I had that as I'm writing, because it's really good to have that kind of feedback. I get that from my critique group, but I very rarely get it from readers.
Yeah, it's actually better to get it from readers, I think, outside. It's, because it's someone that doesn't know you or anything, right? So.
Yeah, so much fun. I love hearing from readers.
Well, fantastic. Okay, so we've got it. And the book, Deadly When Disturbed. So we've got DM Barr. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.